Welcome back, guys. In this video, you are going to get an update on the moratorium placed on all proposed campgrounds in Sanford, the neighbors who are trying to stop my campground, and what the ordinances in other towns in York and Cumberland counties look like. And we're going to get after it right now. Since the retroactive moratorium was passed back in June, the Sanford City Council is considering what the setbacks from the residences or the property lines are going to be going forward for all new campgrounds that try to build in Sanford. Now, setbacks from the residences versus structures from the property line is two different things, and I'll get into that shortly. The neighbors and myself are sharing information with the Sanford City Council members to help the city decide what the new setbacks are going to be. Currently, based on the current zone rules for our proposed campground, the setbacks are 15 to 25 feet from the property lines for a new structure. Some neighbors have violated these setback rules for whatever reason and have built within 15 feet of the property line or have structures that are actually on our property. It seems a bit odd that the neighbors don't want to move their structures that are on our property, but they also don't want us building RV sites inside our property lines. If you've watched my other videos, you know that over half of our 20 plus abutting neighbors were encroaching on our property when we first purchased the land. Some of them are still encroaching and throwing trash on our property. I don't know if they are trying to bully us or what, but if you are trying to build a campground, you should be aware that some opposing neighbors can behave like this. Again, if you watch my other videos, you know that I have already committed to creating privacy barriers between the campground and the neighbors using natural foliage. We are willing to plant additional buffers on both our property and the abutting neighbor's property in order to add privacy. But it seems that the neighbors feel that because they cleared their land first, they have some sort of priority over what we do with our land that abuts theirs. Guys, I want to take a moment and thank those of you who have shared words of support on social media. It means a great deal to me and our family. I also want to let you know that if you want to learn more about everything our family is going through to get a campground hopefully approved in the city of Sanford, click subscribe and tap the bell so that you'll be the first to know when we post another video. Now, I agree that the City of Sanford ordinance on campgrounds is dated, and it should be updated. What I'm concerned about is most of the neighbors who are sharing recommendations with the City Council are actually trying to stop our campground. I think this is concerning because, remember, we are trying to update the campground ordinance for the entire city and future campground proposals, not just our campground project on Sand Pond. Listen to this audio clip of the president of the Sand Pond Association that's supposedly organized to protect Sand Pond.
We are an association, loosely held, but still an association, with the same intent, and that is to stop the campground.
Based on what you just heard, do you think the neighbors will really be unbiased and suggest campground rules that are in the best interest for the future of our city? Or do they just want to stop our campground project by suggesting overly restrictive campground setbacks? These neighbors have suggested that our campground will destroy the quality of the pond water due to excessive people swimming in the pond. It's easy to share opinions as if they were fact, so I contacted the Department of Environmental Protection, and they said that more people swimming in the pond will not hurt the pond's ecosystem. And they went on to say that the neighbors' behavior of clearing all the foliage at the water's edge and their septic systems, which are too close to the pond, are what could lead to the future destruction of the pond. The northern end of the pond is where most of the damage to the pond's ecology is being done. One of these neighbors suggested that my wife and I pay to bring in public water across our property to these cottages. And this made me raise an eyebrow, so I decided to read their property files at the City Hall, and here's what I learned. Several of these campground opposers over the years have had problems with their septic systems, and to get them fixed they needed to get variances because their properties don't meet current building codes, which require that septic systems be at least 100 feet from the pond and also at least 100 feet from any well being used as a potable water supply. Let's take a look at just a few of these variances. This neighbor's latest septic system is 86 feet to the pond, 41 feet to a neighbor's well, and 73 feet to the other neighbor's well, and only 70 feet to their own well. This other neighbor, their septic system is only 80 feet from the pond and 60 feet to a potable water supply. And here's another one. This neighbor's septic system is only 61 feet from the neighbor's well and only 60 feet from their own well. Their risk of ingesting sewerage is so great, they are using a sewage pre-treatment system. Now I'll stop there, but you get the picture. No wonder they wanted my wife and I to pay for the cost to bring them clean, safe public water across our property. If the ecology in Sand Pond gets destroyed, or if any of these residents start getting sick, you can bet that their septic systems probably play a role in it. Like I said in my other videos, our proposed leach fields are 400 feet from the pond and will have to pass stringent city and state of Maine approvals before we are able to build them, and they must pass inspections every year. Now let's get back to the campground setbacks from the neighbors. If you do the research on the number of campgrounds in the towns and cities of York and Cumberland County, you'll find that most have no campgrounds or maybe one campground. And if you dig into the campground ordinances of all of these towns, you'll find that the campground setbacks from the neighbors will be all over the place. For example, let's look at the 10 towns which have adopted a campground setback of 100 feet from the neighbors. 7 of these towns have no campgrounds and likely simply copied the campground ordinance from another town. This is probably true of at least 2 of the 3 remaining towns that have campgrounds. I was told by an attorney who owned a campground in Old Orchard that the town adopted a 100-foot setback to deter campgrounds. And I think that the same is probably true for the town of York, which has 7 old campgrounds that have built out very close to the property lines and are now grandfathered. You can't do that with new campgrounds today. Now let's look at the towns and cities who discuss campgrounds in their zoning, but do not specify a specific setback, at least that I could find in their ordinance. Of the 10 towns listed, 5 of them do not have a campground. The code enforcement officer in Scarborough told me that for a campground and some other uses, the planning board may impose additional setbacks beyond the 15-foot specified in the zone. In 5 of the town ordinances I looked at, nothing about campgrounds was mentioned. Therefore, the setback would fall to the zone unless otherwise specified by the town. When looking at dozens and dozens of campground ordinances, there was a lot of copying of the same campground ordinance by nearly all of the towns. Take a look at the 6 towns that mandate a 200-foot campground structure setback from any residence, not the property line, a residence. And notice that 4 of them either have no campgrounds or only 1 campground. And I was told by one of the code enforcement officers in these towns that their town is not business friendly and that they likely adopted this very strict campground ordinance to prevent campgrounds from coming to their town. Is that what the city of Sanford wants? As a community, do we want to deter campgrounds from coming to Sanford? Leave a comment down below. Now let's take a look at the towns with varying campground setbacks. Lyman, Waterboro, Windham, and Wells have a 25-foot setback for campgrounds. And notice that Wells has 13 campgrounds, which is more than double of any other town in Cumberland or York County. And if you look closely at the Wells campground ordinance, it says that, quote, there shall be a buffer strip of at least 25 feet in width adjacent to all lot lines. And any of the park sites or facilities shall be screened, not set back, from the view of any dwelling unit located within 200 feet of the park's boundaries. Okay, I think you get the picture. What I want to point out here is that sometimes a massive setback was placed on commercial businesses because the town wants to stop businesses from coming to their town. Wells, for example, has 13 campgrounds and Lebanon has 6 campgrounds. Our proposed campground touches Sand Pond in 3 locations, which we hope to place RV park models on to rent out. The shoreline of these 3 locations will stay untouched and heavily forested for our campers and the insects and animals alike to enjoy. This is in contrast to what the neighbors have done to their shorelines. Just look at all the clear cutting they have done, which has destroyed part of the pond's ecosystem, and it was all done so that they could get a better view of the water. Like the town of Wells, our RV cabins would be 15 to 40 feet from the property lines, and we are willing to heavily vegetate along the border of both our property line and the neighbors in order to restore the buffer that they have destroyed on their property, and in some cases on our property as well. Looking from the drone, you can see the 3 areas we own that touch the pond are in fact heavily forested and will stay that way for plants, animals, and campers to enjoy. The neighbors want a 100 or 200-foot setback from the property lines in order to prevent us from using our land that abuts the pond. This waterfront is why my wife and I paid a premium for this land. And now the neighbors don't want us to use it the way they do, only we won't destroy the waterfront the way they have, and our septic systems won't be leaching into the pond either. It's important that we be able to put RV park models on these waterfront areas because these are the highest rent spots in our proposed campground. I agree with campers who say that they don't need to be on the water, but some campers are willing to pay a premium for sites like this. Since we are only proposing a total of 39 campsites, these 13 premium RV park model rentals help justify the construction cost of this project. All right, let's take a closer look at the town of Wells and try to understand why they are so campground friendly by having a 25-foot setback with a 200-foot visibility mandate. The town of Wells is well known for having property taxes that are lower than most of its neighboring towns. Now, why is this? It is likely because of the revenue the town generates from the tourist season. How much money is being generated? Well, the average camping family of 4 spends at least $200 a day outside the campground every single day. Take a look at this chart. Look at the number of campsites per campground, and the total number is well over 2,000. Multiply this number times $200 a day times the number of days in the season, let's say 90 days or 120 days, times maybe 80 or 90% occupancy. Give me your answer in the description down below. That's an amazing amount of money coming into the town every year. If this was in Sanford, these folks would be spending money at local restaurants like the Third Alarm Diner, Shane's of Maine Ice Cream, El Mexicano, Sanford House of Pizza, and others. They are also spending money at our hardware and grocery stores, places like the Little Par 3 golf course, Bolorama, and our local services like plumbers, electricians, and machinists are all getting hired to do work at the campground. This additional revenue could have a considerable positive impact on Sanford small businesses. But my neighbors who are against the campground don't want a campground in their backyard. Several of them, including a few very recently, have told me they are against my campground. Yet they send information to the Sanford city officials stating that they want to help update the campground ordinance.
We are an association loosely held, but still an association with the same intent, and that is to stop the campground.
Many of our neighbors, including Brian, don't even live on Sand Pond. In fact, many of them are from out of state. If you haven't been watching my other videos, our engineer submitted our campground plans to the city of Sanford back in June. Because of my neighbors, the city immediately passed a retroactive moratorium to stop our campground project from moving forward. This moratorium also stops other campground projects in Sanford as well. We hope to have a new campground ordinance that we will have to work with sometime in November of 2024. Michael Hannon, an attorney and clean water advocate that does pro bono work to help keep the country's lakes and ponds free from pollution, spoke at the Sanford Moratorium meeting and said this.
Quite frankly, of the many different uses, and I think I'm told that there are 2 or 3 pages of uses that Michael and Bonnie could make of their property there, the very best one, as far as the environment is concerned, and for me, if I were a neighbor, is to have a campground.
I realize that some older campgrounds attract a rowdy crowd. Our focus for this campground is on more high-end campers. For example, we will only have premium campsites that will be at least 4 times the state's minimum size, and we hope to keep them heavily forested for privacy. Our plans include 100 amp electrical services to each site and full town water and septic utilities. We have no plans to pack in the campers into small campsites. Excessive noise from things like barking dogs will not be tolerated. Our camper profile is looking for a quiet vacation on a lake or pond that is near the seacoast where they can enjoy a night sky with friends and family. The Sanford Planning Board will discuss updating the ordinance on Wednesday, August 7th at 6:30 p.m. at the City Hall. To date, we have not done anything with our 113 acres of land except clean up some downed trees from the winter storms and had a whole bunch of wood chips delivered that my neighbors are calling the city to complain about. That's all that I have today, guys. Thank you for watching, and if you want to learn more, watch this next video.